The Voyage of St. Brendan was a bestseller in the Middle Ages. It combined hagiography with a Celtic sense of the mystical sea, and it even inspired modern efforts to recreate the saint's voyage in old-style leather-skinned boats. The story's sense of the desert sea helped shape what Northrop Frye would later call a green world structure of storytelling about nature. The sea became a metonym or physically based metaphor for nature in an early medieval sense. C.S. Lewis drew on the story's themes for his Narnia book, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. J.R.R. Tolkien likewise drew on it for the magical elvish sense of the western seas and Middle-earth, featured at the end of The Lord of the Rings. All reflected what Lewis described as an ancient sense of nature. He defined it in this way while referring to a later work of green world literature by an Irish poet, Edmund Spenser. But Lewis's definition of nature could apply to the work of the author of The Voyage of St. Brendan as well. Quote, "Most commonly he understands nature as Aristotle did, the nature of anything being its unimpeded growth from within to perfection, neither checked by accident nor sophisticated by art. In some respects, indeed, she, nature, symbolizes God himself." End quote. Indeed, the early Irish Saint Columbanus and the early Irish philosopher John Scotus Erugena, writing in the same era as the composition of the Voyage of St. Brendan, both referred metaphorically to the ocean of divinity. Likewise, the author of the Life of St. Columba, about one of Ireland's most famous saints, referred to the sea as a desert for monks seeking ascetic enlightenment. It's no surprise that the Irish would find in the sea a metonym or physically based real metaphor for the spiritual otherworld that they found engaged with everyday life and a part of the natural state of humans and life on Earth. In fact, there is a whole genre of such sea voyage stories identified by scholars in early Irish literature, called Imrava stories or rowing about stories. Living on an island in an archipelago, the lives of Irish monastics often centered as much on the sea as on land, and there would come the question, which way do we see our landscape primarily? Mainly sea with bits of land, or mainly land interspersed by sea? It is like the old optical illusion, two faces or a vase. There were also cultural layers suggesting multiple dimensions to live in early Irish textuality. Some works, such as The Voyage of St. Brendan, were written in Latin or in Irish, translated into the other bilingual language, while drawing on traditions from both language cultures, and often using words, terms, and names from both in what is sometimes called a macaronic text. Greek, as known to Erugena and probably other Irish monastics, and Germanic languages added more cultural landscape layers. In later centuries, in English literature, this green world or other world often came to be identified more with the forest or the greenwood of Shakespeare and Robin Hood than with the sea, due to changing orientations of English culture. Yet the Voyage of St. Brendan remains regarded by some as an account of travels around the sea that possibly included early encounters with America by Europeans. In this sense, America, too, became a kind of other world or green world in later European imagination that had not forgotten the Voyage of St. Brendan.